Coming up on Tech News Weekly, Jason Howell and I have got quite the show for you. Up first, Alex Kantrowitz is here to give us the latest on TikTok. That's right, it's an ongoing conversation and a lot is happening. In fact, we can't make too many predictions because things could change. After that, we bring on James Thomson, developer of PCalc, to talk about the release, a surprise release of iOS 14 and what he had to do as a developer to get his app ready for day one on the App Store, before we round things out with Russell Hawley of Android Central to talk about the Oculus Quest 2, the new PlayStation, and gaming. It's all that plus so much more on this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. Tech News Weekly is brought to you from TWiT's LastPass Studios. You're focused on security, but are your employees? Well, LastPass can ensure that they are by making access and authentication seamless, whether employees are working in the office or remotely. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 151, recorded Thursday, September 17th, 2020.
This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by ITProTV. Get the best, well-rounded IT education from the experts. Visit itpro.tv/TNW for an additional 30% off all consumer subscriptions for the lifetime of your active subscription. And use code TNW30 at checkout.
And by Barracuda. Did you know that 91% of all cyber attacks start with an email? To uncover the threats hiding in your Office 365 account, get a secure and free email threat scan at barracuda.com/TNW.
And by Casper. From award-winning mattresses to pillows, sheets, and duvets, Casper transforms the way we sleep one snooze at a time. Go to casper.com/twit1 and use code TWIT1 for $100 off select mattresses. Hello and welcome back to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am Mikah Sargent.
And I'm Jason Howell. And boy, TikTok just keeps on ticking, doesn't it?
Tickety-tockety.
This whole TikTok story just ticks and it talks and it keeps going back and forth and back and forth. And just when we think the story's done, it's not really.
Because the clock
That's where we are right
rolling?
now anyways.
Sure.
President Trump has the company in his administration's sights, and we could hear any day now, apparently, how he feels about the latest news, which when we talked about this earlier, the last time, we didn't know this, but Oracle and possibly others plan to have a stake in the company. And joining us to navigate these muddy waters is Alex Kantrowitz from the Big Technology podcast and newsletter. Welcome back to the show, Alex.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great to get you on. So as I just mentioned, last time that we discussed the TikTok saga on this show, Mike and I anyways, we didn't know which U.S. company was going to be involved. Now we know that it's Oracle. It could be others as well. Talk us through how that came to be, especially because for quite a while there, it seemed like Microsoft was firmly at least in the rumors anyways. So how did this change and why Oracle?
So before I start, I'll say that every time I talk about TikTok, I make sure to caveat at the start that this is the most confusing acquisition of all time. I don't think I've been involved in anything that comes close to anywhere near as confusing as this. And that's because, it's not just your typical company acquisition, but there's also the U.S. involved and China involved, and also a presidential election going on at this moment. And it's not just like a full app, it's part of an app. So I feel like we should definitely be careful, or I'll be careful about saying anything with complete certainty, but I'll give you my best guess. So Microsoft seemed like it was the company in the lead here, right up until China said, actually, we're going to put a step in the acquisition process that's going to make us review whether or not that algorithm is going to go along with the deal. And at a certain point, it was basically like, the algorithm is not going to go before the sale deadline. And, for a moment, it seemed like the Trump administration might have pulled a fast one here, right? Saying, let's set a 45 deadline and make sure that the app is sold, and maybe get ByteDance to sell before the Chinese government really caught on to what was going on. But I don't think there was ever a real good chance that that was going to happen. And so once the Chinese government put that restriction in, it all of a sudden went from a sale of a complete app to what really looks like a hosting agreement. And I think Microsoft was really intent on owning the whole thing. And so then all of a sudden, ByteDance rejects Microsoft offer, and standing in the ring remains Oracle, which they probably have like a good idea isn't going to try to exert as much control. Probably just wants a cloud hosting deal as opposed to running the app in the way that they want to. Like Microsoft said they were going to make a number of changes. Oracle has said almost nothing about it. And so that's why Oracle's standing there. And it's funny, you have Walmart seems to be coming along for the ride as well. Most recent reports are that Walmart wants to, team up in some way, and potentially the Walmart CEO gets a seat on the board. So you had Walmart going from a group of SoftBank and Google to the Microsoft group, and now to the Oracle group. So they're the ultimate fair weather fan in this entire equation. But that's sort of how you get to Oracle on this one.
Okay, so Oracle would, I guess, to some degree make sense, let's say, to ByteDance if they're agreeing to make some sort of agreement like this. How would this benefit Oracle as a company? It kind of seemed out of left field to me anyways. Microsoft made, I suppose, more sense. But like you said, this is a really confusing situation that we have here. So it really just seems like a bunch of names were thrown in the sky and one was grabbed out, and that name happened to be Oracle. So what does Oracle really get out of this exactly? Is it access to data? What do you think?
I mean, Oracle gets a cloud hosting contract, that's for sure. They've been trying to make their way into that world. And when we talk about cloud hosting, we talk about Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. We never talk about Oracle. Oracle's sort of this dinosaur on-prem type of solution. And so maybe that helps them say, hey, we can actually do cloud. Look at what we're doing for TikTok. That's the positive. The negative is that it comes along with a lot of pressure because, ultimately, if they are part of a ownership group or a partnership that ends up messing TikTok up, that will haunt them down the line, because I think that today's TikTok users are going to be tomorrow's enterprise software buyers. And, we're going to get to a point real quick where like the people that are dancing and consuming TikTok are going to be making a decision on what ERP solution they want to implement in their company. And if they look at Oracle as the company that messed up their favorite app when they were a kid, it's going to take a long time, perhaps a lifetime, to build those bridges. And I don't think Oracle is fully aware of that risk right now because they don't understand consumer social. But if I was the person running the acquisition on Oracle's side, that's what would keep me up.
Okay, so we know that Oracle's in the running or is kind of at the head of this. We know Walmart is a possibility. We also kind of know that what the Trump administration and President Trump specifically had requested in all of this. He's kind of, laid down a line and said, this needs to happen. Here's the deadline. If it doesn't happen, I'm sorry, TikTok, you're out. But then we have this, which is not an outright buy, which, to some degree seemed to be kind of what President Trump was aiming for. It's a different kind of deal. So how does this satisfy that requirement? And what do you think we're going to run up against as a result of maybe this not being an outright buy like possibly President Trump wanted?
Well, I think from the beginning, this has really been a reality show for the president, where we're coming up on an election where the economy is really up and down, and that's being generous. Stock market's good, but Main Street is suffering. We have people dying from the coronavirus and just widespread unrest inside the country. And do you want to, you want that in the headlines all day long, or do you want like a story where you're forcing China to sell the most popular global app it's ever created? I'd pick the second if I were him. So to me, I think that this is, that might be the main thrust of it. I do think that there's real reason to go after TikTok. I mean, one of the most compelling arguments I've heard about it is that, TikTok it has an algorithm in the background that shows you content on that For You page that's not based off of a follow model. And it's, possible that if there was no, monitoring by the U.S. at all of that algorithm, that people on the back end in China could end up, shifting cultural attitudes in the U.S. without anyone knowing. And so you want some sort of U.S. ownership or oversight in order to be able to prevent that. And then, of course, from a national security perspective, you want to make sure that the data that everybody has is safe and protected. So that's why you'd want to explore it. Now, this acquisition or this deal, we won't call it an acquisition because it's not, but this deal or arrangement that they might come to with Oracle would take care of one of those problems, right? The national security issue, where Oracle would process all the data that comes through TikTok, and that would sort of alleviate some of the concerns of the Chinese government, in collaboration with ByteDance, using that data for purposes we wouldn't want here, especially if you're the president. Your job is to keep national security apparatus safe. So, that helps it. Of course, Oracle's been fairly pro-surveillance, so there's another side to that coin. But if you're the government, you're not really thinking about that too much, I don't think. And, the deal doesn't necessarily address the algorithm issue, which I would argue is the bigger issue, but it's something. I mean, if you want to say something good about it, it's definitely something. But if you think about it in total, I mean, it's hard not to see it for what it really is, which is, reality show in the middle of a reality show.
Yeah, and it definitely does feel like this. And every like I said at the top of this story, every week we keep coming back for more because it's just kind of bewildering to see how this has all happened. Now, I've saw before showtime that President Trump is expected sometime in the next, it could be today, it could be tomorrow, to comment on this. Sources are saying they're not happy with the arrangement, which kind of points to either changes needing to be made with the deal, or I don't know what, or TikTok just, sorry, the U.S., is not a market that you can participate in. Could they even afford to lose the U.S. market if it really came down to that? Is TikTok strong enough to weather that storm? And do you think it'll even get there? That seems like such a such a powerful move, but do you think it might happen?
I don't think we're going to get to a ban. I mean, because I think TikTok will probably be fine if it doesn't have the U.S. market. I mean, obviously, the U.S. market's been good for it, but will it survive for sure? And also, all the kids will just use VPNs and find a way to use it anyway, because while U.S. software is banned in China, so are VPNs. Here, you can use a VPN, get around a ban. So, the kids are smart. They know how to do it. They'll be able to find TikTok one way or the other. But ultimately, I think this is going to be something, I mean, again, with the caveat that you shouldn't get too far ahead of yourself, because probably by the time this airs, I'll be wrong. That's how fast the story has been moving. But I do think that this deal is going to get approved. It has everything you would want if you were the president, right? It would have the excitement. It would have the illusion, or not even the illusion. It would have definitely be a story about you being tough on China, taking some, national security measures. You don't get TikTok banned. There's not going to be a whole, secondary news cycle that you have to deal with. It's almost sign, seal, deliver with a bow, handed to one of your allies in Oracle that takes care of the data problem. So I think it's, ultimately approved by the Trump administration. Yeah, some people are going to be upset about it. You've heard some Republican senators make a deal about it. And I don't think this is the final iteration of what happens with TikTok. I think this is going to be an ongoing saga. But if you're President Donald J. Trump and you're looking at this deal, I don't think there's any way you don't sign it right now.
Yeah, interesting. And we aren't going to have to wait much longer to find that out, I'm sure, the next day or two, or maybe even right now while we're in the middle of the podcast. That's just the way the story is moving. Alex, really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you coming on. And also congratulations on the new venture. Of course, this Big Technology podcast and newsletter. Where can people go to follow your work with Big Technology right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Twitter. You can go to my handle at Kantrowitz, but Big Technology Podcast is where feel like the most fun is happening. Just type Big Technology Podcast in and you can find all the good stuff. We have conversations with reporters and VCs. And this week we actually have BuzzFeed News' international correspondent, Megha Rajagopalan, who talks about some of the internment happening in China of Muslims. And we go into a little bit of like what the TikTok saga means for the global internet at the end. So I'd love to see you guys there.
Right on. Congratulations. And thanks for hopping on. We appreciate it. Enjoy your time outside. We'll talk to you soon.
Will do. All right. Take care.
Take care, Alex. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Up next, iOS 14 is here, and Apple's announcement of its launch had developers scrambling to finish up their apps. More on that shortly. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by ITProTV. You need all forms of training when entering a new field, and ITProTV makes sure you'll have it all when learning IT. Their instructors make learning IT entertaining. ITProTV provides you with virtual labs, so you have the ability to try out the skills you've learned. You won't have to purchase expensive hardware or deal with setup. You can run your virtual machine with multiple instances of Windows Server and desktop clients on your macOS, Linux, iOS device, and, of course, your Windows platform. ITProTV gives you the opportunity to truly be ready for your IT certification tests with its practice tests. Get ready for exam questions covering Microsoft, CompTIA, EC Council, PMI, and many more. With ITProTV, you also have the opportunity to supplement your education with webinars featuring hot topics in the tech world, as well as events and podcasts. Check out its podcast, TechNado, with Don Pizzette, featuring industry guests and IT news recaps. With more than 5,800 hours of IT training, ITProTV is the best place to go for getting started or expanding your IT career. Earn certificates in A+, CCNP, and so many more, including CompTIA. ITProTV is also the official video training partner for CompTIA and has 12 CompTIA on-demand courses. Sign up for a premium membership and let an expert guide you with setting goals and implementing an IT training program to help you reach them. Mark your calendars for October 1st at 3 p.m. Pacific time for a special online panel discussion sponsored by ITProTV with Leo Laporte, Amy Webb, Steve Gibson, and ITProTV co-founder Don Pizzette. The topic is what the new normal will look like after COVID-19 from an enterprise IT perspective. Invest in yourself and your future with ITProTV. Go to itpro.tv/TNW and use code TNW30 to receive 30% off all consumer subscriptions. That's itpro.tv/TNW and use code TNW30 for an additional 30% off for the lifetime of your active subscription. ITProTV. Build or expand your IT career and enjoy the journey. Folks, Apple held its event this week, and we were excited to see the introduction of an Apple Watch and an iPad Air, a new version of the iPad Air, as well as some other, changes and things like that. But what we didn't see was the introduction of a new iPhone. And typically what happens is that Apple announces the new iPhone in September. And with that announcement comes the release of the operating system for the iPhone that the company showed off at its WWDC conference over the summer. So, given the fact that Apple didn't announce a phone at this event, and going into it, we kind of were aware of that, there was the thought that maybe iOS 14, the new version of iOS, wasn't going to ship until the new phones arrived. But at the event, Apple said, by the way, iOS 14 drops tomorrow, meaning the day after that event was held. And folks, that meant that people, in particular developers, were scrambling to get their apps ready for day one on the App Store. I am excited to be joined by indie developer James Thomson of PCalc fame, DICE fame, and of course the PCalc About screen, which has fun games and bananas in it. Hello and welcome to the show, James Thomson.
Hi, Mikah. It's been a pretty quiet 48 hours. I'd say nothing really has happened in the developer community. Certainly no drama.
I see the everything's fine. Is that what it's fine? Everything's fine dog behind you. Is that how you were feeling?
Yes, that dog has been a constant companion for most of this year, in fact.
So let's talk about the introduction of iOS 14. I'm curious, this was something that externally, as someone who is not a developer, as just someone who covers this, I thought, oh, wow, iOS 14 is coming tomorrow. Can you describe, I'm curious, kind of what did you expect? Were you expecting that iOS 14 would be dropping the next day? Did you think it was going to come with the iPhone? Did you think it was going to come at some other time? Kind of let us all stand in your shoes for a moment, be it house shoes or actual shoes, whatever it happens to be. Tell us about your experience kind of leading up to the event and the rumors, and then what happened the moment that they said, hey, iOS 14 is coming the next day.
So we had pretty good knowledge that the iPhone wasn't going to be at this event. And so the thought was, well, it's likely if they're doing iPads, the iPads are going to have to ship with something. They're probably going to ship with some form of iOS 14. So it's not inconceivable that we will get an iOS 14, what they call a GM seed, which is like, it is the final version. But we usually, what happens is we get it a week ahead of time. And also on the same day, we get the Xcode that's required for building the final versions of our apps, because we can't submit them without that. And so my bet was, okay, I think Tuesday is going to be my deadline. So I'm going to make sure that my apps are in a reasonable state at the weekend. I'm going to take some time off and I'll be okay. And I was expecting we would get the SDKs and we would get Xcode. But what I was not expecting was for Tim to say, and it's shipping tomorrow. Because, if you look at my Twitter, and I don't recommend that you put it on the screen at the moment, but my most popular tweet of the entire night, because developers tend to sort of live tweet these things, was a single expletive in all caps. Because nobody was expecting that. They've never done that before. There are so many reasons why it's a bad idea, which we'll get to as we go along. But normally, because developers want to have their apps ready for day one. Because, if there's bugs that they need to deal with, or they've spent the summer adopting new features like widgets or something, they want to get that on the store on the first day, typically because A, customers are looking for those kind of things, and B, press are looking for those kind of things. And also Apple, there's a fair chance you might get a feature if you've adopted a lot of the new features of the OS. So to get on the store for day one, you need to go through app review, obviously. And app review can take any time from half an hour to weeks. Depending on how busy things are and whether you get stuck somewhere. So the thought of having to get our apps, check that there's no problems with them, compile them with the new Xcode, do some last minute testing, then submit them to Apple, and then get them through app review in time for the operating system dropping. That seemed mathematically impossible to me.
Yeah, and you make a calculator, so you would know.
Well, apparently not, because I did actually manage to get all my stuff onto the store for day one. But not without issues. Because, I am a conscientious developer. I don't like rushing things, but rushing things is what everybody had to do, because everybody had a plan, which usually involved, we've probably got a week. And we had less than 24 hours. So everybody just took what they had, put it into Xcode, sent it to Apple, right, go for it. And, within some time, somebody found a problem with PCalc, that it was, in some circumstances, taking an extra second or 2 seconds to launch. And it's like, I don't know why that's happening. And I spent the morning debugging that problem. But if I'd had a week to look at that, I would probably have found that problem before it went out to customers. And anecdotally, I've seen a lot of third-party developers shipping, 0.01 releases of their software today, or trying to get them into the store today, because they missed some small or annoying bug. And even Apple, there's bugs now coming out for the GM build, which might well have been found if it had been in the hands of developers for a while.
I want to stop you because I want to ask. So one of the, and you touched on this, but I really want to drive home this point, because with Tech News Weekly, we have of course techie listeners, but we also have people that are kind of just looking at the tech news and kind of want what's going on midweek before the big TWiT show on Sundays. And so I really want to drive home the point that you made earlier, and that is the question. Some people might be going, okay, so Apple says iOS 14 is launching. why do you need to be in the store right away? What is the benefit to the developer to have their app available and ready to roll on day one of the App Store? And of course, I know the answer to this, but we're kind of playing what is a devil's advocate here. If someone were to ask that, what is the benefit there to actually getting your app ready to roll on day one for folks?
So when the App Store launched, there were 400 apps on it, and we happened to be there on day one. And that was really good for us because, we were the only calculator on the App Store. So that gives you a certain degree of visibility. And now there's 2 million apps or something on the store, and visibility and getting yourself known to customers who you want to buy your app, which is kind of why in this business. That the easiest way to do that is to be there. If you're not on the store, like people will download the OS, the new OS, and they'll go, "Oh, I hear there's widgets in it. Let's find what are the best apps that have widgets in them." And you can go to a number of reputable news websites which will list a bunch of apps and say, here's some cool ones we found. Or Apple might have a feature up on the store saying, 10 great apps with widgets in them or something.
Right.
And that is the moment where people are going to find your app the easiest because they're actively looking and they're looking for things that have these features. Now, you could wait a week, but a week later, that kind of buzz has died down. So, I think that's the main driving one. It is just that visibility to everybody, and you're hoping that App Store editorial might notice your app and things like that. And yeah, there are arguments for not rushing or not. Normally we don't rush. There's a bit of a push to get stuff out, but normally you have slightly more than 24 hours. But we want to be there. But some people will say, I will wait and I will take my time, or it should be pointed out that this is 2020 and the summer of all our lives has been wildly different than we were expecting. That for Apple as well, for all the employees there. But I've been working on stuff and I didn't get as much done as I wanted this summer, but I thought I'm in a place that I can draw a line and I can say, right, here's what you get for day one, and I will keep working on stuff, I promise.
Awesome. But
some people like, Marco and Overcast, he was like, I'm not ready. So, I'm going to take my time. And I think that's an equally valid approach to things. But yeah, it was just something all of a bit of a shock. And it's not really stopped because about minutes before we went on the air, Apple dropped an Xcode 12.2 beta, and we had Xcode 12. So Xcode 12.1, who knows? And this has this has SDKs in it for iOS 14.2. So yes, it's interesting.
We're just about out of time, James, but I did want to get before we let you go, your just quick thoughts on the event itself, particularly from a developer standpoint. You've got the new iPad Air that you can really compete with the Pro, and the new Apple Watch Series 6 that offers some new health sensors and things like that. Are we going to see? I would imagine that we are. Is PCalc going to do blood oxygen sensing, or are we going to get a faster calculator? What are we looking at? How are you feeling about these new updates ultimately?
The PCalc is generally not the most performance sensitive thing. Dice is. I am interested very much by the iPad Airs because I think seeing the A14 chip, which is likely to be, what's in the new iPhones and is probably what's going to be in the ARM-based Macs, is going to be very interesting to see what the performance is on them, because it's possible that the performance is higher than the iPad Pros. There are other trade-offs, with storage space and RAM and other things like that. But, I would love to get my hands on one of those and see what I could do with it. I will say that I think it was Tim said the thing about iOS 14 dropping the next day just before the promo video went out for the iPads, and I don't remember anything that was in that promo video because I just blanked and I was like, what?
Send tweet and then
I need to go back and rewatch a certain amount of that.
That makes sense. Well, James Thomson, I want to thank you so much for taking some time with us today. We do appreciate it. If folks want to follow you online and see your one-word expletives and other things, where do they go to do that?
Best place, if you want to find me on Twitter, it's James Thomson. That's Thomson without a P. And PCalc.com has all my apps.
Awesome. Thank you, James. We appreciate it.
Thank you, James.
Thanks for having me.
That's awesome. I love that. I mean, I'm sure that was a scary moment, but yes, I've encountered those blackout moments too. It's like, wait a minute, what did I just happen?
Yeah.
What is going on? 2020. All right, coming up, Facebook's next Oculus is their only Oculus going forward. I mean, until they update this particular Oculus. Of course, I'm talking about the Oculus Quest 2. Lots of details there also on the PS5 pricing. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Barracuda. Barracuda is the provider of cloud-enabled enterprise-grade security solutions that protect email, networks, data, and applications. Suddenly, as you know, you have dozens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of employees all working remotely. Many of us are, each one of them getting tons of emails every day, and that makes them vulnerable. 91% of all cyber attacks start in email. So you've got spear phishing, ransomware, account takeover, conversation hijacking. Multiply that by how many employees you have times how many emails are being sent, and one single click on the wrong email can cost you money, it can cost you customers, and it can cost you your reputation, which is bad. All that's bad. Barracuda researchers have seen a steady increase in the number of coronavirus-related spear phishing attacks since January, and they've observed a recent spike of 667% in this type of attack since the end of February. So, when you're talking about people in these positions, these hackers or whatever that recognize an opportunity, guess what? The coronavirus was a really big opportunity to scam people. So get the protection that you need for your company with Barracuda Total Email Protection. It includes all-in-one email security, backup and archiving, AI-based protection from spear phishing, account takeover, and business email compromise, an automated incident response that gives you options to quickly and efficiently address attacks, security awareness training so you can educate your workforce so your employees can be the first line of defense against attacks. And we're seeing these attacks all over the place. We're hearing about it right now. There are new attacks impersonating organizations like the World Health Organization, attackers utilizing domain spoofing and promising information related to the coronavirus in an attempt to trick users ultimately into a phishing scam. Number of stories just like that one. And you can ensure the safety and security of your business with Barracuda to protect against them. To uncover the threats hiding in your inbox, get a secure, free email threat scan of your Office 365 account risk-free at barracuda.com/TNW. That's barracuda.com/TNW. Barracuda, your journey secured. They will protect you. Check them out for yourself. And we thank Barracuda for their support of Tech News Weekly. All right, so this was a big week, actually big couple of weeks in the realm of gaming news. Facebook and Sony had some big announcements just this week over the last couple of days. We have Russell Hawley from Android Central to talk all about them. Welcome back to the show, Russell.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. Good to see you. So let's start first with Facebook, everybody's favorite topic. But this is like the fun side of Facebook because it's not Facebook, the social network. It's Facebook, the VR company, Of course, we're talking about Oculus. Facebook announced the next generation, the next version of the standalone Oculus Quest headsets, the Oculus Quest 2, aptly named. Talk first, I suppose, about the hardware upgrades that we're seeing here. It wasn't very long that the first Quest came out. I think it's just a little over a year. And here we are on the next version of it. What kind of upgrades, and are they meaningful to you? Do you think these in and of themselves, they are a great reason to upgrade? What do you think?
Sure. So, I mean, if you take a look at the pure hardware upgrades, you've got a faster processor, a notably faster processor. What we've seen in the past is we've had mobile processors that have kind of been, turned into these VR headsets that we've seen from like the Oculus Go and then the first Oculus Quest. This is actually using Qualcomm's XR2 processor, which is the first Qualcomm processor that is just straight up built to handle virtual reality and augmented reality applications. So it's not something that's kind of been shoehorned into something else. This is purpose built for these VR applications. We know that it's got considerably more storage than the previous generation. And we also know that it's lighter when you wear it on your head. You know, these are all three things that are super important for people who go to use the VR headsets for extended periods of time, especially because the original Oculus Quest was a little front heavy. A lot of the weight was there on the front. And so if you went to wear it for an extended period of time, you definitely felt it, which is a shame because it's a lot of fun to use.
Yeah, and you've got the upgraded visibility specs, but I've read about this, that the original Oculus Quest had the two lenses, the two different displays separated, so you could kind of adjust for your head a little bit better than what you're getting here, right? It's a single panel, and they're basically making the eye width adjustment through software alone. Do you think that's going to be good enough? I mean, we've seen this in other headsets. How do you think that'll fare?
Yeah, so I mean, what this really comes down to, you have a single panel and you've got two lenses. The two lenses can be kind of manually adjusted to fit where it is that you're going to need for your eyes. But every time Oculus makes this kind of step towards uniformity, it means that different head types are just not going to be compatible. You know, that they try to address as many people as possible, but it's just not going to be for everyone. You know, you're going to be able to put your head in this thing and you're going to tweak it a little bit, and it's going to work for most folks. But when you have a single panel and you have these kind of manual software adjustments that are being done, it's just not going to work for everyone, and it's probably going to impact folks who have glasses a little more than everyone else. When it comes to using this, because you're more than likely going to need some kind of insert instead of using your regular glasses like you were able to with previous generations.
Okay. Well, that's a little bit of a bummer, but I understand. I'm the one wearing glasses after all, so I get it. I'm the obstacle. Now, I've read Sam Moskovich's piece, his review at Ars Technica. I've also read Ben Kuchera's review at Polygon. I'm sure you've read both of them at this point, or maybe you haven't. But to summarize, they couldn't be further from each other. Like
true.
Sam is full on like, holy cow, do not buy this thing. Ben this is the most amazing thing in VR. Maybe not quite to that level, but very positive on it. Where do you land, at least on paper right now, from what you've seen? Are you optimistic? Are you hesitant in any way? What are your thoughts?
So the greatest thing that Oculus has going for it right now is the ecosystem. The games and apps that come with it are fantastic. And you know, there are just no other place to go when you want to experience VR things. And Oculus made that very clear during the announcement where they were revealing the headset. You know, we've got Star Wars games coming to this thing. They're rebooting Myst, which is one of my favorite games of all time, to be able to play in VR. You know, this you couldn't have built a game platform that was more targeted to me as a giant nerd who wants to put a computer on his face and dance around. But from a hardware perspective, you're going to need to spend the extra $50 in order to have the headset be comfortable, because there's an accessory that goes in the back and holds it a lot better than the straps that come with it out of the box. And the controllers are actually this is really kind of frustrating, and you get a little bit more of this in Sam's review than you do in Ben's. The controllers use less battery, which is great, but the reason that they use less battery is terrible is because there are fewer sensors projecting infrared light, and that means that the controllers are actually slightly less accurate when you go to use them. And when you play games like Beat Saber or some of the archery games like Hollow Point and things like that, you really kind of develop that muscle memory, and you can feel when the controllers are just slightly out of sync. So I'm concerned that a lot of people upgrading from the Oculus Quest to the Oculus Quest 2 are going to notice that discrepancy, and it's going to impact the way that they play games, and it may stop them from playing games like Beat Saber altogether because their collective scores are going to drop. So that's something that I'm super concerned about as far as, kind of mass adoption as we go to hand these headsets out to as many people as possible. The accuracy is something that makes VR work, and the accuracy of your hands and the accuracy of how they're tracked is something that's super important. And for Oculus to make this decision, I'm sure that they did a ton of research and decided that it just wasn't a big enough difference to justify having the other sensors in there. But it's pretty clear when you deal with kind of the hyper accurate games like Beat Saber, which is one of the most popular games for the platform. Having that accuracy is important.
Not only is it one of the most popular games of the platform, it's like Facebook's game, essentially.
Right, yeah.
Oculus game.
Yeah, Beat Games is now owned by Facebook.
Got to get that one right. Yeah, that is a little strange.
There was also a note in there about the battery life. There's something that was consistent across each one of the reviews that I found, including Ben's on Polygon, is that the battery is not as great as what we saw with the original Oculus Quest. And that is a consequence of the headset being lighter. Facebook research shows that most people aren't using the headset for more than an hour at a time. So having a headset that only lasts about 2 hours means that most people are not going to notice that difference. You're going to be able to put the headset on, you're going to be able to use it for a little while and then put it back on the charger. And most folks are not going to notice that difference, but they are going to notice less weight means that there's less, neck strain to go into that. Unfortunately, Oculus also has a bunch of live events, and some of those live events include, big screen, allowing you to sit with friends in a virtual movie theater and watch actual movies. And, I'm a big old nerd who watches things like the extended edition of Lord of the Rings. That's a 3.5 hour movie. My Quest, I would have to plug it in order to watch that. That's a thing that I can do now on the Quest that I would not be able to do on the Quest 2. And so it's something that I wonder how many people it impacts. It's probably not as many as I think, but it's definitely there.
Yeah, it's definitely one hurdle anyways. Another hurdle, depending on, I think, who you talk to and how long they've been in the VR space or long they've been with Oculus as a company and as kind of a hardware manufacturer, is this requirement of Facebook login, which with the new headset, the Quest 2, like it is a flat out requirement. You cannot use this headset, from my understanding anyways, without a Facebook login. Do you think most users are going to be willing to make that trade-off? Like I don't have a Facebook account right now, so I find myself in the uncomfortable position. Like I've got an Oculus Quest 2 on order, so I'm going to have to do something here. And Facebook's really stringent on requiring real names and that policy and everything like that. So after a number of years of not being on Facebook, suddenly I'm faced with the reality that I need a Facebook account to even use this hardware. Is that going to detract enough people to make a material difference? Or do you think at the end of the day, people are going to be like, hey, look, this is just one of the best headsets out there. I'm willing to make that trade-off.
It really feels like with each one of these problems that I brought up and you've brought up, that that Facebook, has done the math and decided that there are enough people that are going to continue to use the headset or adopt the headset anyway, that it's okay to lose those folks or to kind of push them into doing something that they're not comfortable with. And that sucks from a business perspective. I really think that most folks who have an Oculus Quest headset are already using Facebook. I am also not one of them, and I'm not looking forward to opening a Quest 2 and having a thing that says your Oculus login is not enough. You need to now merge it to a Facebook account, and that's something that's coming to the Oculus Quest 2. As well as the original Quest. So even if you have an original Quest, that software update will come to eventually, force you to kind of merge to having just a Facebook login in order to access this. And that raises some pretty significant concerns. I've seen a few folks who say, well, I'll just create a dummy account and use that. Facebook, is pretty good at finding dummy accounts and getting rid of them. This is something they've done for mobile games for a really long time. And the problem here is, with a single mobile game, you lose kind of progress on a single mobile game, and that sucks, but you can kind of move on. I know people who dump hundreds of dollars into Oculus games, and if your Facebook account gets banned because of something, whether it was intentional or not, or it turns out it was a dummy account that your finances were attached to, and that account gets banned, you lose all of that. Like there is no mechanism to get it back. When Facebook was asked what happens if something happens accidentally, they quite literally looked at the reporter and said, I'll get back to you on that. Like they don't have a policy for that right now. And that's kind of alarming.
Yeah, that really is. Last question I have on the Oculus, and then we'll talk briefly about the PS5 pricing. Do you think it's a smart move for them to go all in on the Quest 2 and this kind of standalone approach? Obviously the Quest has been very successful. It's been hard to keep in stock, especially with the coronavirus. It's hard to keep these on the digital shelves, let's say. But within this announcement, they basically said the Rift S line, the traditional Oculus Rift line is done. PC-based VR with our headsets is going to be entirely done within the Quest 2 through Link, and that's good enough. Do you think that's a smart move? It seems to some degree to be kind of handing at least a certain segment of VR over to their competitors, but I don't know. How impactful do you think that will be?
I think it's a really fascinating decision on the eve of a whole bunch of people about to spend $700 on a brand new graphics card from NVIDIA to say that graphics card is just not going to be quite as useful on your now $300 headset, and that there isn't going to be another option for high-end VR, because at the end of the day, the Oculus Quest 2 is nice, but when you plug it in through Link, you're still not getting the same experience that you would through a higher end VR headset that is capable of pushing those higher graphics. The resolution bump there is nice, but it is not Oculus Rift CV2 nice or Oculus Rift 2 nice. It's frustrating, and again, it's another one of those things where it seems like Facebook has done the math and decided that this is the path forward. The thing that it really kind of opens the door for our companies, Valve and HTC, not so much for home VR, but for enterprise VR. VR arcades, of which that there are just more of every day, or at least they were before the world shut down, where you could walk into a lot of places and see kind of VR arcades, and now you can guarantee that those things are not going to have any kind of Oculus hardware in them, which is an interesting decision because, having been in a number of these VR arcades, one of the first things that I see someone who gets out of it for the first time is how do I have this experience at home? And it seems like a layup for Oculus to be in those spaces and then be like, hey, you actually can have something pretty close to this for $300. But that opportunity is not there now, and that's interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, moving on to other gaming news, just here real quick. Sony followed up on Microsoft's price announcement last week for the Xbox S and X. This week, we heard from Sony to say, hey, we've got our pricing details for the Sony PlayStation 5. At the end of the day, I mean, no matter how you slice it, the PS5 is simply more expensive. And we kind of knew that going in. We knew that was going to be the case. Talk about, from your perspective, how these pricing comparisons land for you. Like, do you think PS5 offers enough to inspire people to drop at least $100 more than the Xbox S for a digital version, that you get more for that money, of course? But what do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, Sony's pitch on this is the games. Sony's pitch for this for the last generation has been, this is the place where you get, these exclusive games that don't exist on the Xbox, they don't exist on the Nintendo Switch, and they've even gone so far as to be a little tiny bit dishonest in their presentation yesterday for games that they said are only coming to PlayStation, and then later is like, actually, they're coming to other stuff too. So the big pitch there is these exclusive games, and the difference in price between these two. I think the biggest thing is the disk drive. There are people who are going to look at the Xbox and assume that the difference between the expensive Xbox and the inexpensive Xbox is the same as the difference between the expensive PlayStation and the inexpensive PlayStation. But in this case, it's not true. And I wonder how much more work Sony is going to have to do to explain that to people who are wondering why it is that the quote unquote cheap PlayStation is $100 more than the Xbox. And the reason for that, of course, is that it is the same hardware on the inside as the PlayStation 5 with the disk drive, whereas the Xbox, we know that the Xbox One S is considerably less capable than the Series X, and so how Sony is going to navigate that is going to be a little difficult in a world where people can't just walk into a Best Buy and talk to the guy who would sit there and explain it. But I know that from a sales perspective, both Sony and Microsoft did something really interesting this year in including games, either through Game Pass or through PlayStation Plus, in that you can now buy a console and with your subscription have either the 15 games that Sony promised or the 150 games included in Xbox Game Pass. You don't have to buy a game to go with it. And having worked in retail during holiday seasons when grandparents are walking in, they've got the little sheet of paper that says, I need to buy the PlayStation. The next question is always, do I need a game with this, or do I need a controller with this? And for the first time, the answer is no. And that, I think, is going to be really interesting for consumers as they come into this holiday season, is knowing that the box really is the only thing that they need.
Yeah. This is going to be a very interesting holiday for gaming, and I'm in an uncomfortable position because I have the PS4. I'm excited about the PS5, not so much about the Xbox, but my kids really want a Nintendo Switch, and I realize I'm a couple of years behind, so it's kind of like I can't really get both of them. So do I make them happy, or do I make me happy? I would be happy with a Nintendo Switch too. So I think ultimately it's not going to matter that much. Answer. Russell Holly, thank you so much for hopping on. It's always a pleasure talking with you. If people want to follow your work online, where can they do so?
I am at Russell Holly on pretty much everything. Pretty easy to find.
Right on. Awesome. Thank you, Russell. Take care of yourself. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, folks, up next, our stories of the week. But you got to wait, because I'm so excited to say that this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Casper. That's right. The folks that want to help you sleep easy. We've all heard of Casper. I mean, if you've listened to a podcast ever, you've heard of Casper. The sleep company with outrageously comfortable products at not so outrageous prices. From award-winning mattresses to pillows, sheets, and duvets, Casper transforms the way we sleep, one snooze at a time. They've got bedding, bed frames, and even a dadgum dog bed. Casper has everything you need to build the bed of your dreams. Every Casper mattress is designed with a system to react and adapt to your body all night long. Inside, precisely 1,501 perforations create a cooling system so effective, you won't be awake to notice. Only Casper mattresses are made with 86 supportive gel pods to align your spine and eliminate aches and pains. Altogether, it's the cooling, supportive comfort you need for the most refreshed feeling come morning. Man, oh man, do I ever love my Casper mattress. I sleep so well on that dadgum thing that I kind of just don't want to get up in the morning, to be honest, because can I just have just 30 more minutes? It was so easy to unbox and watch it breathe life into itself. And I'm thinking about upgrading soon to a newer Casper mattress, because I've had this one for a long time and it's great. But I'm thinking about going from a queen mattress to a king mattress, because 2 dogs and 2 people, it doesn't happen on the queen, that's for sure. But on the king, perhaps it could. With over
Get a Casper pillow, by the way. Get a Casper pillow. We just got Casper pillows for all of our beds. They're really nice. Oh my goodness, they are. The Casper pillows are fantastic. I've got the Casper sheets. I currently have the bed frame and the box springs, the Dealy 2, the platform, and it's all great, especially that platform mattress, because the platform setup, because it's so easy to take apart and move when I moved to where I live now. So it's all fantastic, and it's designed so smartly, and that's what I love about it. With over 20,000 reviews and an average of 4.8 stars across Casper, Amazon, and Google, Casper is becoming the internet's favorite mattress. You out there can be sure of your purchase with Casper's 100-night risk-free Sleep On It trial. Casper also offers free shipping and painless returns to the US and Canada. And now with 0% APR financing options, it's even easier to try a Casper mattress. In fact, that's how I bought my first Casper mattress, was with the 0% APR financing option. Go to casper.com/twit1 and use code TWIT1 for $100 off select mattresses. That's code TWIT1 for $100 off select mattresses. Terms and conditions apply. See casper.com/terms. All righty, folks, I wanted to give a shout out for my story of the week. As I mentioned, iOS 14 is here. And with that, if you watch Smart Tech Today, the podcast that I co-host with my pal Matthew Cassinelli, with the launch of iOS 14, Matthew Cassinelli has introduced what he calls the Shortcuts
catalog. There are 300 shortcuts and 300 actions with explanations and ratings and everything you could possibly want to know about Siri shortcuts on iOS. So if you are an iOS user, you have got to check this out. It's just packed full of information on how to use shortcuts. I tell you what, I get that question more than probably, I wouldn't say any other question, but most questions. Can you tell me how I use the Shortcuts app? What's the Shortcuts app? How do I do shortcuts? What are shortcuts? I tell you what, Matthew Cassinelli is the expert on shortcuts, and his shortcuts catalog has so much information, so you can go in and learn exactly what you want to and find out what exactly shortcuts is and what shortcuts you might want. There's a bunch of information that's available for free, but Matthew has also launched a membership option that gets you some extra goodies. So you can join, become a member, pay a monthly subscription service, and you through that get so much more, including a newsletter with like a bunch of options for new shortcuts, a bunch of ideas for new shortcuts, which has been fun for me because I have found a bunch of new ways to basically just troll Matthew with his own shortcuts by sending him text messages filled with text-based memes, ASCII characters, etc. So if you're looking for a laugh, looking for something fun to check out, and in many ways incredibly helpful, it's Matthew Cassinelli, CASSINELLI.com/shortcuts, I believe is I want to make sure that's the URL.
Siri shortcuts.
There you go. Siri shortcuts, all one word.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
So head there, check that out, and you'll be well on your way to some absolute Siri shortcuts magic.
Wow. Congratulations, Matthew. This is pretty awesome. I'm getting lost in it. Obviously, it doesn't apply to my phone because I'm on Android, but I love this. And anytime there's like this type of collection of customization, really kind of under the hood, kind of getting directly to where you want to go. The challenge there ends up being there's so many options that how do you kind of manage all of that choice? Yeah, totally. Paralysis of choice. I find myself there a lot with Android, and in particular, kind of the many things that Assistant is capable of. And it's like, well, that's great that it can do all these things. How do I remember that? Yeah. Because there's so many.
Afterwards, you're like, oh, I could have done this, but in the moment, you don't quite remember. Yeah. So you got to check this out. What's your story of the week?
Cool. Well, mine's robots, basically. Robots always kind of get me going. Robots and AI and all that kind of stuff. So this caught my attention. Robots are coming to take our jobs. You probably never heard that before, right, Micah? No one's ever said that before.
Robots are going to take my job. Hello, welcome to the podcast. This is Tech News.
What a wonderful podcast spoken out of the mouth of a robot. Now, we're going to be continuing to do our jobs, hopefully, for years upon years. But here is one example of robots taking someone's jobs anyways. In Japan, they have a workforce shortage, labor shortage. And so one way around that, of course, is robotic workforce in some ways. In this case, two of the largest convenience store franchises in the country are deploying robots with plans to have them fully operational in 20 of their stores by 2022. They named it, the manufacturer anyways, names it the Model T after the Ford automobile, of course. These robots are designed to stock the shelves in these convenience stores, and they stand 7 feet tall. They've got wheels, so they're mobile. They can move around. They look kind of badass, personally. They've got cameras, microphones, sensors, of course. And each hand, there's two hands, has 3 fingers so that they can pick up objects and stock shelves and everything like that. We've heard of robots that stock shelves and everything. Usually they're like in a single place. This thing's fully mobile.
I don't like it.
What makes this really interesting is they're operated by a single human. So one human who's wearing a VR setup, as well as like these special gloves that gives that person a sense of touch, essentially. So when you're picking up a can, you feel it. They guide the robot to stock the shelves. They can talk to the staff at the store through the Model T. It's got the microphone and the cameras and everything and speakers so that they can communicate. And Telexistence is the company that actually makes the robots. They basically charge a fee to the stores that they say is competitive to human labor. So the store says, we have a worker shortage, or maybe the store says we don't want to pay someone to do this. Instead, we'll pay you a fee. And in essence, the store could hire one person to handle the stocking of a number of their locations, right? That person could connect to this robot and then stock the shelves over there and then connect to this robot, instead of having to hire one person per store to do these types of jobs. So it also enables hiring from different locations. So it's not
I could do this in my free time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's kind of like, what was that Amazon? Oh man, I'm blanking on the name. The Turk, what is it? Robotic Turk, or I can't remember. Suddenly I'm blanking on the name. But
oh god, anyways. It's like Sonic the Hedgehog. It reminds me of.
It is a little strange.
It's got some Sonic Sega vibes to it.
It does. It really does. Mechanical Turk is what I was thinking of. Crowdsourcing site for business, so you can, hire people remotely and stuff. Anyways, I just thought this was interesting. It turns out that the COVID-19 kind of pandemic moment that we're all living through is really boosting the need or the kind of energy behind automation. It was already kind of energized prior, but now when you have situations where people can't go into work or don't want to go into work because it's unsafe or whatever, suddenly businesses, are looking to automate more things. And it's just one of many ways in which COVID-19 is kind of rapidly like changing the marketplace as we know it and business as we know it. But I thought that was kind of interesting.
Absolutely interesting. And I mean, because I think about the folks that, they're doing DoorDash, Instacart, these different things where it's one person servicing many people you've got less people going into the store because instead of the 9 people in a day that ask this one Instacart worker to bring them groceries, you've got the one Instacart worker going into the store and bringing groceries to those 9 people. This is like that, but on a virtual level. So, your day is spent sitting or stand, whichever one you want to do, but with the VR strapped to your head, and then you simply load the stuff onto the shelves. And then it's like, oh, well, I did that in Sydney, Australia. Let me check in over here in Bangkok, and then I will head over to, that's kind of interesting.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's blowing my mind a little bit, to be honest. But I don't know if I saw 7-foot tall robot inside of a store, I would be a little nervous to enter that store, even if it does have what's supposed to look like, I guess, a friendly fox face. It's still a little creepy.
Right. What is the torque in that hand grip?
Right.
Like if someone on the other side is like, all right, I'm going nuts now. I'm going sick rogue, of this job, and I'm going to start, going rogue and punching people and stuff. Like, should we be afraid? Should we be very afraid? Probably so.
Yeah. Just
that's obviously the extension of any robot story is it going mad and taking over the world. Anywho, that's it for this show. Tech News Weekly publishes every Thursday at twit.tv/TNW. That is the place where you can go to subscribe to this show. We hope that you do that, or you can link out to YouTube and watch it there. Whatever you like, it's all linked to from our show page, twit.tv/TNW.
And you can follow us on social media. We are at Twit on Twitter, at twit.tv on Instagram, and at TwitTalk on TikTok. You can also tweet at my host, Mikah Sargent. He is at Mikah Sargent on pretty much all of the social media. And, hold on, let me get back into character. And you can also check out Hands on iOS, which will be publishing later today, showing you how to update or upgrade to the latest version of iOS. What about you, Jason Howell?
I, too, am a robot, but I'm from the future, so I sound like a human. That's right. Nice. You can go to twit.tv/HOA and find Hands on Android, the new episode that focuses on Android 11's new power menu and how to customize it. Also, big thanks to John Ashley and Burke for pushing all the buttons behind the scenes. Sorry, I malfunctioned there. And thanks to you for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Tech News Weekly. Ha, ha, ha. Ha,
error,
ha,
error,
ha,
error,
ha,
error,
ha,
error, Error.
Be sure to check out the other shows on the network, like my other show, Hands On Wellness. I love to share different tips and tricks that's going to help you get a better grasp on your personal wellness. Just go to twit.tv/Howell and subscribe now.